Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Dr. Arnold Nerenberg. I've been a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of California since 1974, and I've walked upon this earth since 1941, so I'm over 80 years old. And it's my privilege and my pleasure to be in your presence and have this opportunity to present to you very valuable insights and inspirations of a lifetime. I've also been an educator, and I'll talk about that. I've been in the university system, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. The title of today's presentation is Students and University Professors, the Psychology of Our Educational System. Students and University Professors, the Psychology of Our Educational System. So in addition to being a student and going through getting my BA, getting my master's, getting my Ph.D., I've also been taught in the university. I was an adjunct associate professor at San Diego State University for a number of years. As a graduate student, I taught at Arnold College and the University of Texas. I've taught at Palomar Junior College, Columbia Junior College. As I mentioned, I was a teaching assistant at Barnard College, part of Columbia University, back in about 1963, 64. I've also been an adjunct instructor at San Diego State University. So I've much experience. Of course, I was not a full-time professor, so there's different political and other considerations that full-time people have that was not part of my experience as an adjunct professor. I'm dedicating today's presentation to my dear niece, Tansy Rabi Jahed, because this whole idea came to me while talking with her, and she's writing a wonderful book and has been an educator for a long time, an excellent educator herself. There's a lot to be said here. Now, first of all, we really have three parts to the educational system. You have the student, you have the professor, and then you have the administration. Now, ideally, the student really is motivated to learn and is not just doing it to get a degree so he can make a livelihood, but really is interested in the knowledge. That's the ideal. Then ideally you have a professor who really wants to teach and really cares about his students or her students, and so the students can advance educationally and in the quality of their lives and in their professions and trades or whatever. Then you have the administration, which ideally is there to support the functioning of the university professors, so they don't have to spend time negotiating a contract with a building or hiring janitors to clean. They're just free to do what they do, which is to teach. That's the ideal situation. Then you have departmental committees and chairmen. So you'll have a chairman of, say, a psychology department or the chairman of the philosophy department. And each of those departments ideally is there to serve the professors and to serve the students, ideally, and to coordinate with the administration. This is an ideal situation. And you know, there's so many wonderful administrators who really are dedicated to their positions, to the functioning of the university, their loyalty, and some deans are involved with fundraising, and they're really committed to doing this day and night, very committed and loyal to it. You have many university professors who are just excellent professors. They just impart a love of the knowledge of the course material, the subject matter. And many university students really became even more in love with the knowledge, either as an undergraduate or as a graduate student. As a matter of fact, a good professor as an undergraduate might even have a big impact on what the profession a student goes into. And the impact of the professor is enormous. If they have a love of the subject matter, that's often contagious. The students will have that love. They also have other obligations. There used to be a saying, publish or perish. So the university is not just educational. Many universities have a research dimension to it, where the professors are expected to publish books and journal articles and get government grants, bring in money for their departments from the grants, so they have those responsibilities. So you have many top-notch research universities. They get government grants. You have alumni who contribute and the fund, which funds the research that's going on. Now, ideally, that research would make the professor even a better teacher because they're really up front, they're on the forefront of the knowledge. They can assure their research and excitement with their students, ideally. We're going to talk about the ideal and then the reality of what's happening. And often the ideal is there. In reality, at times, you can have some universities, major universities, where really the advancement of the professor is based not on how he teaches, but how much money he can bring in the university in terms of grants. If he can bring in, $1 million grant or $5 million grant, well, the administration can turn a blind eye for how he is as a teacher. And he's turning out a lot of research papers, increasing the prestige of the university. So you'll have some teachers who are more focused on that, and they don't really care that much about the teaching. And that's unfortunate. That does happen. Part of the psychology university professor is this, advancement. You want to advance in your position, your job. They want to advance too. They want more money, more power, less responsibility in the classroom. You start off as an assistant professor, then you advance to an associate professor, where you have tenure, where you, outside of some major infraction, you don't get fired. You have a lifetime position if you want it, and then a full professor, which is even higher. Then you go up higher, Professor Emeritus. So the student is really focused on learning. The professor wants to teach you, but it also has in mind advancing. The assistant professor wants to become an associate professor. Associate professor wants to become a full professor. Also wants higher salaries. That's always on the mind. Or maybe wants to become the chairman of the department. So there's ambition. The students aren't necessarily privy to that, the private motivation of the professor. Now, the knowledge itself, what we really need, I'm going to be talking about what is and what ideally could be. The knowledge itself should be adding to the well-being of the student and add to the well-being of society, where the student is then has an education where he or she can make significant contributions to the advancement of the society, the country they're in, or the world. Something really constructive, something honorable. Essentially, we're talking about the need also to make sure we bring honor into the universities even more. We have it there now, but we need to grow it even more. And I'm going to talk about how that can be done, where we put honor before pride, honor before our advancement, honor before the money, honor before the prestige, where honor comes above everything. That's going to help our educational system. And part of the message here is going to be how to do that, how to achieve bringing honor more into the educational system. Ideally, we want the student and the professor want to look at the knowledge as sacred, really important, and it's clear how it's going to impact the world. Much of our education system is based on the Greek system, where it was knowledge for the sake of knowledge. You had mostly the aristocracy, the wealthy. They didn't need it to make a living. It was just something that they were interested. You had really basically gentlemen scientists. I mean, they weren't applying for grants. They just funded it themselves. The student, the best attitude for the student towards the professor is to have respect. Very often the student will even come to love the professor. That love facilitates the transfer of knowledge. As a matter of fact, the student might even become more like the teacher, more like the instructor, more like the professor. Might even start walking like that professor, might even start dressing like that professor. Because of the admiration. So the admiration and respect really adds to the education, because then when you love that teacher, you love the knowledge, you absorb more, it comes into you more readily. So that's very important. Now, the proper attitude of the professor to the student is gratitude. Without the student, it wouldn't be a professor. You have to have students to be a professor. So the appropriate reaction of the professor is to have gratitude. So the students and the professor should have gratitude to the administration for handling all the matters that need to be done in terms of buildings and maintenance and whatnot. Administration should be grateful to the students that they have people they can help and also bring in money. And also being grateful for their professors who are there, because they really are on the front lines teaching. So in an ideal, honorable situation, there's gratitude all around. Administration to the professors, to the students, students to professors, to the administration. I can't overemphasize the importance of this gratitude. Now, it's very rarely sufficiently there. But the respect and admiration and even love for the professors is there. In fact, many students are in awe that the professor is so learned, so knowledgeable, so articulate. I mean, they can't even believe this person has all this knowledge and can expand on it. It's a wonderful experience to behold such knowledge, the power of that knowledge. You know, the professor, in our educational system, and we have some excellent educational system, as it stands now, everybody likes answers. You get tested, the professor asks the students questions, student answers it, and the grade's based on that. And that's great. Certainly we want the students to know what the professor feels important in the subject. However, there's something missing, and I want to bring this to the educational system. So any professors or future professors that are watching this will remember what I'm saying, hopefully. Students should also be graded on presenting questions in an exam. You say, the professor say, well, you're going to be graded on your answers to these questions, but also you have to submit 10 questions yourself as if you were testing students to show your mastery of the material. So then the students give questions, because being able to ask questions is essential, absolutely necessary, not just regurgitating answers, but being able to formulate questions, because in your life, both as a student and afterwards, it's really asking the questions that lead to progress. The question, what is there a better way to do this? What really is behind all this? Asking the questions missing right now in our educational system. And we need that. The other part of our educational system, it's very common for people to say, let's get a good education so we can get a good job. Excellent. Excellent. Of course, many people shouldn't even be in university. They should be at a trade school, get a good education, get a trade school, and get a great trade. But nonetheless, many of those individuals are at the university. So getting the knowledge to get a good job is excellent. Doesn't go far enough. At the university level, they should also say get a good education so you could also become an entrepreneur, have your own business. For the most part, that's not there. Now, as a student, typically it goes this way. The professor tells you things, you take notes, you're reading the books, you test it on it, you regurgitate it back, you get an A. A week later, a month later, you don't remember a lot of it. A year later, you hardly remember the course. What I recommend for students, when you've satisfied the professor, the class is done, you finished your final, you write down the 3 most important concepts you had from that class. What are the 3 main concepts that I got from this class that I want to remember 10 years from now? Now, this education is for you. That other education was for the professor so you can pass or get a good grade to help your advancement and to going to, higher learning institutions or getting a good job, whatever. But what about you? What did you want from there for you? What were the 3 main points that I want to remember in 10 years from now? It's not happening, but I want to advise all students and advise all professors to start telling students, when you finish your exam, write down what you think are 3 most important things that you want to remember in 10 years. And that's, in some sense, the real major part of your education. Now, I came up with that. Now, this one I'm going to tell you I didn't come up with. When I was a freshman, the dean, whoever was presenting, said, when the class is over, you're a student in the class, don't just get up and leave. He said, sit there for just a minute and say, what are some of the main points? What are 1, 2, or what are 3 of the main points in this class that the professor was making? And just, if you cannot come up with it right then look at your notes, because that's what you're going to remember. When you leave the class, that gives you a skeleton to add the other facts on later. So do not just get up, just take 30, 60 seconds, say what are the 1, 2, 3, what are 3 most important points from this class? And that's what you'll remember. When you go home later, you're going to remember those 3 points. You're not going to remember all the facts and figures that were presented, but you'll remember that. In terms of memorizing, I developed a system that was based on what I call program learning. I haven't seen it used much, but the idea in education, and this is good for professors to tell their students and for students to know, is you want to go from being a passive learner to an active learner. You want to go from being a passive learner to an active learner. What do I mean by that? You have to read certain materials for the class. You read it. That's being passive. You're just reading, taking in. You don't remember what. You hope you remember it. You don't know if you're going to remember it. You hope you are. Now, that's not enough. You want to become an active learner. The way you do it is you take an index card. I'll tell you one thing. I'll give you a fact that I learned 50 years ago. Acetylcholine is a neurohumor in the central nervous system. Believe me, I don't use that fact ever for anything, except once in a while when I give a lecture to demonstrate this method. Now, how do I do it? You take an index card, and on one side you say, blank is a neurohumor in the central nervous system. On the other side of the card, it says acetylcholine. Then you go, acetylcholine is a blank in the central nervous system. You turn over the card, it says neurohumor. Then you go, acetylcholine is a neurohumor in the blank nervous system. The other side of the card, it says central nervous system. So you go through those cards so you can fill in the blanks. So you became active. It's not just passive, but active because you were writing it down. And then you become active. At the end of the day, you go through all those cards so you can go through them without making one mistake. That knowledge will stick with you. Not only do you know the material, but you know it. So you walk in the exam very confident because you know you were able to fill in all those blanks. And then when you get ready for finals, you take out the stacks of cards you've made all the semester and you go through those cards. You'll have tremendous recall, not just recognition of the right answer, multiple choice tests, but if you have right essays, whatever, your recall will be through the roof. Acetylcholine is a neurohumor in the central nervous system over 50 years ago. Maybe 60 years by now. So you want to be an active learner. And it's good if you can study with other people and you're testing each other. You're staying active. You want to stay active. You don't want to just be reading it. Sometimes that's, many people have some people have photographic memories. They can read it the next day, but spit it out in an exam. But in terms of really carrying the knowledge with you and feeling confident when you step into the exam, it'll cut down your exam anxiety, I can tell you right now. A challenge for a professor, see, he's got so much knowledge, so powerful, that knowledge, so articulate. The danger of a professor is to become arrogant. Any professional has that problem, arrogance. So the professor has to really stay humble. How? By putting honor before pride. Honor before pride. Humility is placing honor before pride. We'll talk a little bit more. And I'm talking about honor. I'm defining honor as loyalty to your highest constructive values as enshrined in the 4 commandments of honor, while striving to cause no harm emotionally or physically. And the 4 commandments of honor are these. I call them commandments of honor because we're commanding the honor that's within us to arise in the consciousness so that it will manifest in thought, word, and action. The 4 commandments of honor are these. I wish you well. I take full responsibility for co-creating my reality and my problems. I'm grateful for the power I gained from hardship. And then one of 2, depending on whether you believe in God or not. If you believe in God as I do, as God, your wish is my only wish. If you don't believe in God, you can use I seek always to serve my highest values. It takes 8 seconds to do that. This is actually big, a way of honor. Really, we must have honorable students and professors and administrators. Otherwise, the knowledge could just feed egos and people get arrogant, feel superior. And the knowledge and the insights that people get could be used for destructive purposes without honor. They can be used to destroy people instead of to uplift and cure the illnesses. Honor must be introduced into the educational system. You know, we used to have what was the honor system. You know, you had a take-home test. It was that you weren't going to use books. You're just going to take the test. Or an honor system, whether you showed up at class or not, they didn't take attendance. You had that. But that was just a very minor thing. This is what I'm presenting to you is a much fuller system of honor that should be part of the educational system. To be truly a great educator must be able to convey honor. And education should be certainly of the intellect, but also education of the heart. So to the extent that a professor is honorable, then that good character, that the virtue of that professor, gets also transmitted to the students. Very, very important. Because it is a power relationship. The professor is very powerful. They can fail you or give you a mediocre grade. It's going to affect your progress and what you want to do in your life. So a very powerful position. And that power has to be used honorably. So they're not having favoritism. They're looking at really the merits of what the students know and their performance. There needs to be a lifetime commitment to honor. And so I have what I call a pledge to become a disciple of honor. The pledge goes this way. As a disciple of honor, I pledge myself all the days of my life to the 4 commandments of honor, and I'll teach them to those I love. I'll repeat them every morning, afternoon, and evening, and listen to myself recite them. Very powerful. Even when people take that pledge, they feel good right away. Basically, we're saying, I'm going to use this knowledge for constructive and honorable purposes. I'm going to use this knowledge, and this should be part of the statement that anybody in the educational system would say. I will use my knowledge for only constructive and honorable purposes. That statement, that one statement has to be there. Or a little modification. I will use this knowledge only for constructive and honorable purposes. I'll use this knowledge only for constructive and honorable purposes. That should be that's foundational. And of course, the pledge is another step, but people are not wanting to do the pledge. They may not even want to learn the 4 commandments of honor, but at least you must have the statement, I will use this knowledge only for constructive and honorable purposes. Because as a professor, we're giving power. This is power the students have. They're going to be able to do all kinds of things with it. And it can be used to lower the consciousness of the society or elevate it, whether it's music, chemistry, physics, doesn't matter. It can be used for degradation or for upliftment. And it's your responsibility as a professor to at least have people say, I will use this knowledge only for constructive and honorable purposes. That's a minimum of what you must do for you to serve the institution where you teach, to serve your field of knowledge, and to serve the society of which you live. An absolute necessity to be doing that. There really needs to be, and this is a little tougher to comment, this knowledge, there has to be a fascination. Hopefully they got that from their parents, or they got it in their elementary school, high school, whatever, but at some point, it's really vital. They regard the knowledge as sacred, and they have a fascination. They're just fascinated with it. They're asking questions, not just giving answers, asking questions, fascinated with the knowledge. And the student must have this value to to be a seeker of truth, independent investigation of reality. You don't just want parrots repeating stuff back. Well, in these days, back in the day, you had to memorize all this stuff. Now you just Google it, and it's all there. There must be an attitude of respecting the knowledge, having reverence for the knowledge, being fascinated by it, and being a seeker of truth, independent investigation of reality. Those attitudes must be there to be truly, for an educational system to be all it can be. It's such a sacred responsibility that our professors that we have to our students. And students, there's a sacred responsibility to really ask how you're going to contribute to society with the knowledge you're gaining. It's been my pleasure to present this to you. I'm going to open up to questions. Jay?
Yeah, Doctor, I was just thinking that, no matter what the education, what level you're at, I think that the students can tell if the professor or the instructor is truly passionate about the subject they're teaching, or if they're just there to draw a paycheck. And I think that if they're passionate about the subject, then you're much more likely to emulate them in the future and to remember the three most important things that you took from that class 10 to 15 years later.
When a teacher has a passion for it, it's priceless, totally priceless. Whatever the subject matter is, it's priceless. Certainly the knowledge will be more impactful. So true, absolutely true.
Do you feel that if an instructor is just there to accept or get a paycheck?
If an instructor is just there for the paycheck, it's not as honorable. The honorable approach, the money matters, no question about it. But a more honorable approach is to have the money be secondary to serving the students and serving the well-being and advancement of society. That's more honorable. Doing it just for the paycheck, well, everybody has to make a living, but it needs to be secondary to serving your students, serving your university, and serving the community at large. That has to be even higher. That's higher levels of honor. Absolutely. Good point. Very good point, Jay. Thank you. Well, again, I want to thank you. I presented a presentation on students and university professors, the psychology of our educational system, dedicated to my niece, Tanzi Rabi Jahed. Thank you.